Yeah, welcome to this podcast. We have with us Professor Amit Jain Chauradia. Uh, Currently, Professor Amit is holding the chair of the business department at Dawn University. Sir did his bachelor's in management from University of Miami, and then Professor did his master's in business administration from University of Illinois. And then Professor Amit finished his PhD in strategy and entrepreneurship from University of Illinois. Professor Amit was a professor at the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad till the year 2021. And after that, sir joined Dawn University. Yeah, welcome to this podcast, Professor.
Hey, happy to be here, Manhar. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I actually should take this opportunity to thank you for mentoring my another initiative, which is building up a national digital platform for which the grant is actually under consideration.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Anytime, man.
Thank you. Uh, yes, sir. So human capital is, I mean, obviously one of the most important, drivers of economic growth in the long run.
Yep.
It is human capital and physical capital which determines. And for a country like India, which has a large population base, human capital takes on a whole new level of seriousness. But
Yep.
before I address my first question to you, I would like to you know just be clear in terms of what human capital consists of. So human capital consists of knowledge, skills, and health that people invest in and accumulate throughout their lives, and this enables them to realize their potential as a productive members of society. Is that correct, sir? This definition.
So that's at the individual level. I mean, there's many levels of analysis, but typically human capital is thought of at the more aggregate level, firm or country, not necessarily, individual. When you think of individual, you think of, right, individual knowledge, skills, and abilities, but that's how you define human capital, but it's kind of aggregated to a higher level, usually.
Okay. And so one question which is related to this is that how do you acquire human capital, uh, both at the micro level and let's say at the aggregate level, sir? Like what factors would you think are most important?
Yeah, so let's take a look at each level. And then, the individual level, of course, is what we all are interested in, right? How do we continue to grow our human capital, individual skills, abilities? And so through continuous training and, learning, that's kind of how you do it. I know that recently I was looking at TikToks and how in China, the TikToks are geared towards human capital building for kids and individuals, where it's about nationalism or learning mathematics, where the TikToks outside of China are more social oriented. So even my daughter, when she watches her TikToks, she wants to grow up to be a social influencer. So, it's challenging in these times, but we need to have a concerted effort towards growing your individual human capital, because you can't just let society do it for you. That said, at the firm level,
Yes.
human capital is typically acquired when you consider, do you want someone to train and develop within your organization? Do you want
Yes.
someone from scratch, or do you want
Yes.
someone with some level of experience? And experience is also very it's costly. That's why that's why they have experience. And one of the challenges that organizations face is there are going to be many layoffs happening. I think Spreetel
Yes.
just had layoffs. Meta informed that they'll be doing layoffs. And
Yes.
you wonder, as you grow as an organization, and you want more people, but sometimes it might be more valuable to have fewer people, but to pay them a little bit more. And this is where you need a trade-off, right? Is there a
Yes.
cap for your existing individual human capital?
Yes.
Not really. I don't see a cap, right? I mean, if you know, some people who are really bright can probably do a lot more.
Yes.
And in this gig economy, we try to spread ourselves and diversify.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
even myself, I sometimes try to figure out other ways and other sources of income. But you know, um, it might be more valuable for an organization to try to think about, okay, rather than divide up a task with, two individuals and have a budget to hire more people,
Yes.
it might be more worthwhile to, give a greater share of your wallet to that single individual who can probably do a lot more. But regardless, I know, these organizations are, we're not in a good time right now, Manhar. You know that
Yes.
there's a lot of there's talks of recession and whatnot happening, and so when companies are going to lay off, and especially a company like Meta, which has not done any of this before,
Yes.
it's gonna hurt, but it's all for to try to continue to survive and grow. So that is, of course, a loss of human capital. But how is it acquired? Well, I have this paper with it's a paper I published last year on the airline industry. And what we found is once you pass an experience curve,
Okay.
that's when you finally, you know, get value from your human capital. It takes a lot. Initially you join an organization, you make mistakes, and people might forgive it, but after
Yes.
some time, they
Yes.
stop forgiving it and start penalizing you. And until you pass this threshold,
Yes.
when you finally start bringing value to the organization, it's tough, but that's why they can pay you less. And then once you pass the threshold, the problem that organizations do is they don't pay you more. They expect you to do for the
Okay.
same, better quality work. And, unfortunately, that's not how society works, because that's when they start leaving and want to go elsewhere. But I know Meta does a pretty good job rewarding, their stock options and whatnot given to motivate individuals in the organization.
Okay.
But of course, that's one challenge, is how do you get the most value? And at the end of the day, if you pay your employees more, that's hitting the bottom line and taking it right out of profits, which is why, we try not to do that when we teach strategy. But at some point, what are your organization's goals? And, in some cases you might want to pay them more and then grow the pie, right? That's
Yes.
another
Yes.
possibility.
Yes.
At the country level, human capital is very crucial for growing the, let's say, the GDP of the country. And so
Yes.
we we look at India, and India has a lot of undervalued human capital. They're getting paid peanuts for what they can contribute, which is why remote work is so exciting. Because with remote work,
Yes.
rather than pay someone $250,000 to work in Silicon Valley, you can probably
Yes.
hire you know uh, 50 such workers in India who can
Exactly.
probably do a better job collectively. So India has a huge advantage in human capital. It's just a matter of leveraging it. And it's constantly being leveraged. So, I see a lot of potential growth, particularly with these layoffs, right? For example, if Facebook is laying off all these
Yes.
workers, they
Yes.
still need that work done. So
Yes.
they might move to more of a leverage model where maybe they have a few managers
Yes.
in the US who manage workers in India. The only challenge I see in human capital in India is sometimes the quality of work is very crucial. And that's where, I think sometimes attention might not be paid
Okay.
much, just because in the country, I mean, it's also embodiment of the country. When you go to a
Yes.
country like the US,
Yes.
there are rules. You have to follow the rules. If you don't get
Yes.
rules, there are
Yes.
penalties. In India, the
Yes.
rules can be broken. And so,
Yes. Yes.
that culture, also transfers to the workplace,
Yes.
where, maybe you complete a document and you do
Yes.
80% of a good job, but they need
Yes.
100% for those programs and codes to work efficiently. And that's where
Yes.
that's the challenge. And it's an important challenge, but can it be fixed? Sure.
Yes.
And this is where, you have the right incentives, and
Yes.
if a company can create those incentives, then it should be
Yes.
fine. But India has a lot of valuable human capital that is promising and is just not utilized compared to some
So one so there is this argument also made that China achieved a lot of its growth due to manufacturing of merchandise products. India has the human capital component which China did not have. So if India can export a lot of its human capital to developed countries such as US, it can actually leverage its human capital in that way. Would you agree with this assertion, sir?
Yeah, that makes total sense. The challenge is that sometimes the best of the best, and that's across every country,
Yes.
leave the home country. So in India, in the US, Indians are very successful, very,
Yes.
very successful.
Yes. Yes.
But that's not the average Indian. You're getting the cream of the crop
Yes.
who left their country to go to some better place, and they're succeeding. Now, are they successful because of the country, or would they have been successful anyways? I would
Yes.
argue they would be successful anyways. So why did they leave? Right now, of course, my parents left India, but they left at a time in the 1970s where it was encouraged to come and and it was a different time.
Yes.
But in the last let's say I'd say 30 years, none of my family members left India, and I asked them why,
Yes.
and they say no, that's their country, that's where they want to contribute and be most productive, and that shows strong nationalism. But when you have, and we see this in many areas, when you have the top of your industry, let's say top graduates from
Yeah.
India leave to go to the US and then they don't come back,
Yes.
that's a loss of human capital. The whole Argonauts and losing of the brain drain, that's
Yes.
problematic, right? So how can India keep its best and the brightest, because that's who will help grow the country. And I understand it's a lot of institutions, right? Institutions is very the
Absolutely. Yes.
state level institutions are very
Yes.
weak
Yes.
in India, and very politically
Yes.
driven and
Yeah,
corrupt in many
the
ways.
public educational institution is not that strong as the private ones. The private
That's
ones are,
one,
yes.
right? And the states also, I mean, sometimes you don't want to deal with, rather than work with merit. I mean, there's
Yes.
corruption everywhere, even in the US, there's corruption at the highest levels, but
Even let's say with if you get a decent degree, you might not acquire the skills which you need to do well in the job market. So you don't have the skill set which helps you get a job in India. So
and that's unfortunate, because those skills are very highly valued in the
yes.
US, and we don't have enough of those, and we can't find enough of those.
Yes.
And most of the, so even here, some of those labor intensive jobs that don't pay so well are being taken by those who are coming across the border,
Yes.
because they're the ones who are
Yes.
willing to settle for that
Yes.
income. But so we have our own issues with who we employ.
The thing with human capital is, before I come to objective questions, which is linking human capital with business, the point that I was making, the thing with human capital is that people don't understand that it's actually an investment in yourself, and that investment takes 5-10 years for it to pay. So you have to be patient to go through that process. And with so much of upheaval happening technologically globally, I think it's the most important time ever in history to make sure that you are taking on those skill sets which you need. What do you think, sir, about this?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think so there's a huge growth in data analytics and a
Yes,
huge shortage of folks working in data analytics. And this course I had taken through MIT last summer on machine learning. The organization that was managing it was from India. They were in
okay,
collaboration with MIT,
okay,
and very skilled people, very skilled individuals training us. But again, there's always that quality issues, little mistakes here and there, which is what, I worry about is the lack of attention to detail. But
yes,
in terms of the broader workings and how to get things done,
yes,
you have people who can do it, and those are being taught if those are being adopted in curriculum. And that's where, government plays an important role, because the government mandates that
yes,
each school needs to understand what is machine learning and
yes,
start at a very young age. I mean, you're building those human capital skills right there that are valued by the globe. I mean, that's where the world is going,
yeah,
automation,
yes.
whatnot. And so who's gonna, we talk about so here's where I think India is an advantage to China, right? In
So that
China,
is why, in the curriculum from this year onwards, they have actually introduced data sciences from class 6 or 7 onwards.
oh, that's
It,
incredible.
yes, so that's the new education policy which the government of India has now adopted formally. So it's part of the school curriculum now.
That's
Yes,
brilliant. And so if you look at, let's say, China, right? China is, of course, right, manufacturing, very important, but one problem is that wages are rising in China, right?
yes,
So what was the reason that, let's say, automotive industry shifted all their, manufacturing to the east of the world is because of wages. And so if the wages are rising
yes,
in China, then how do you combat that? Well,
yes,
one way to combat that is you bring in high value fixed cost robots, right? So
yes,
robots do
yes,
most of the work.
yes,
And so I have this project I'm working on with a doctoral student at IIT Mumbai and Dr. Snail Awate. And so what we find is that you know that first of all, um, we know that jobs are being replaced by robots, but these are
yes,
the routine tasks. But for every job replaced, there's a significant number of jobs created, right? For
yes,
that managing those robots,
yes,
designing,
yes,
growing, customization. I mean, a whole new world has developed
yes,
where, rather than getting the standard product, we are moving towards customization, which is very costly,
yes,
but that's where designing in those elements are a greater number of jobs exist there. So China can do that, sure, but India already has the capabilities because of their understanding of the English language, right? In
yes,
China, they don't speak
yes,
they don't speak
yes, yes,
very nationalistic, right?
yes,
So
yes, yes,
that's an advantage in terms of communication that I
yes,
think growing the human capital in India would be more valuable in the future than China, because those jobs would be replaced by
yes.
robots.
So, yeah, I was listening to one interview of Raghuram Rajan. So he said that India has the perfect system in place for it to move from a middle income to a high income country, whereas China had a perfect system for it to move from a low income to a middle income country. Was,
That sounds great. Yeah, that sounds
yes,
about right.
because human capital is what helps you move up the ladder. But the point is that India needs to first get to this middle income country status, which uh, it will take a lot of years. So we
Yeah.
come now to some objective questions, which is linking human capital with business, which, because of your expertise, you might, offer a deeper insight on, these issues. Uh, which, so when we link human capital with entrepreneurship, Professor, what sort of, uh, you know, is analysis, are we actually looking at when we, link human capital with entrepreneurship?
Well, I mean, there are a few things. So I have a project that I'm working on with doctoral students at ISB and the strategy. And what we find is actually a strong relationship with gender, social role theory, and in entrepreneurship. So, there's an organization that was trying to, increase, the benefits to society by working with the government, and they were employing workers. And what they found is that the employment was not as beneficiary to them, because they're giving them a lot of equipment, and they wanted to use that equipment for other sources of income. So the organization moved to more of a
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship model, where they gave, this is the self-employment, where
Okay.
they were basically contracting with all these workers, and it worked brilliantly. And in fact, it worked so well that women were very attracted by this notion, because a female in India, there are a lot of stereotypes to
Yes.
work, and
Yes.
how do you get beyond that? Well,
Yes.
they can't hold a 9 to 5 job, but
Yes.
they can work very well. So they would otherwise get contracted, or get a contract for, let's say, accomplishing this task of, let's say, enrolling beneficiaries into, government schemes. And for every
Okay.
time they got enrollment, they would get, an income. And so this type of gig work was so successful, and they were helping so many people. Now, it didn't work necessarily for the male breadwinner who wanted more income and wanted to work, full time or overtime, but
Okay.
it was fantastic for women. So self-employment, first of all, which, even that is a mode of entrepreneurship at the basic level,
Yes.
is very valuable for just helping women, be empowered, and particularly in rural areas where they may not have this scope. So I think the gig economy is very helpful to
Yes.
getting entrepreneurs going. That said, innovation is a whole other angle to it. And of course, that is also growing significantly in India with the number of patents.
Yes.
Even though they come in, let's say, the US, who can actually take those? And in India, you have the requisite human capital to, build those products and
Yes.
services. And
Yes.
so, entrepreneurship is very strong, and the government should try to encourage more of that.
Yes.
The issue is, again, it goes back to, you know, moral hazard problems, right? You give someone a grant to work
Yes.
on something, and will they
Yes.
actually follow through with that, or just waste
Yes.
it? And so that's
Yes.
where, if there are proper incentives, proper institutions in place to ensure that those are done accurately, I think it's
Yes.
just sky's the limit. What do you think?
Uh, I mean, the issue of moral hazard to me, should not arise as such in a self-employment case, because you are driven by your passion to do something. So as it is,
Right.
even if if you get the funding, that's like, cherry on top of the cake.
Yeah.
So, that's my take on it, sir. Because if you're doing something of your own and if someone is supporting you, then, it's like nothing, which is more beneficial for you. Um,
Right.
yes, sir. And, one point which will also, now be very important is that, so we have the 5G also coming in India now. It's already launched, I think, the five
Yeah.
generation connection. So that will sort of make it more, connected. I mean, it will actually help you to deliver services to rural areas also. Um, yes, sir. And um, in terms of the business strategy, at the firm level, I mean, your human capital also plays a role there, sir. Is that correct?
Can you repeat that question one more time?
I'm saying in terms of business strategy at the firm level.
Yeah.
And so this business strategy, will obviously differ from one industry to another industry. But human capital also plays a role in terms of, strategically placing yourself in the market, right? So what sort of a role would you ascribe human capital, plays there?
So
Uh,
do you want to look at, see, firm strategy and human capital would be at the firm level. Are you considering the firm's strategy with human capital, or are you thinking about the individual human capital?
no, the individual human capital.
I see. Okay. So individual strategy for human capital, of course, is counter to what the firm wants. The individual, of course, wants to be able to get into an organization, learn, grow as much as they want, and keep building. I mean, so at the end of the day, growth is important. So,
Yes,
you can't stay stagnant. If you're in an organization, growth is essential always. So what does that growth mean? Growth in products, services,
yes,
um, collaboration, relationships,
yes,
um, so all these elements are valuable. And so networks,
yes,
so how does an individual do that? Well, I mean, if you dedicate yourselves to an organization and the
yes,
organization is moving in this direction where they want growth, if you see an organization not moving towards growth,
yes,
then of course, unless it's a small business, then, that which may have limited scope. But typically, in a large organization, the human capital is the strategy, right? So once you, let's say, have a vision or a goal,
yes,
who's going to get that done for you? Who's going to do that?
yes,
The people, at the end of the day, people are going to do
yes,
that. So people are going to tell you, this is the route we want to go. This is the suggestion. This is the work. And so, strategy is strongly dependent on who you have. Now, does that mean you can get people? Sure. But that's again the recommendation of your existing people. If they tell you, okay, we need to go in this direction, then you
yes,
start finding people to fill those roles and move on. So it's kind of an interplay between the people in the strategy organization. I think they work hand in hand. I wouldn't necessarily say what goes first, but I'd probably
yes,
say human capital is probably the enabler. Because if you
yes,
don't have the right people, then how will you grow, right? How will
yes,
there's only so much that the market will allow you to do, particularly in a service-driven economy.
yes, yes.
Um,
Uh, and that is where, your experience of the business domain, comes in handy, because you also need to understand the industry, which you are in, and you can, uh, I mean, you are not going to, have like a novice is not going to know the industry completely, and that's where your experience, which helps you understand that industry, and that is the reason, most people stick to one organization in the US. Is that correct, sir? But that's
They
not
used to, well, they used to, but now so careers are changing all the time because people
okay.
sometimes get bored.
Yes,
So they might be doing something and they might switch. I would say they're probably likely to be in the same industry or related industry, not necessarily the same firm.
okay.
So what that means is that as an organization, you have to be aware that your people are going to leave. Your best
Yes,
people are going to leave,
yes,
but that doesn't mean they won't come back or that you won't find a substitute that they
yes,
recommend.
yes,
So, if my best employee leaves, but I hire two people who work with the best employee and they're just as good, then
yes,
I'm okay. And so that's what, you're hoping for, that, people will leave, but,
yes,
who are those who can fill in those roles and not necessarily new to the industry. So people mobilize in the industry all the time, and that's okay. I mean, then they might come back, right? That's boomerangs.
yes, yes,
Those who leave and come back. If you
yes,
stay in the industry and you're there forever, I mean, you're gonna probably achieve what we call would be tenure in
yes,
that place.
yes.
So as long as the organization is aware that people leave, I mean, industry skills are probably more important than firm level skills.
Okay, yes. So we finally, yeah, the final question would be, sir, uh, we've talked about the human capital, component, which is very important at the firm level and at the aggregate level. Now we come specifically to, so what toolkits, quantitative toolkits are used actually to measure human capital. If you can, just give an insight into this.
Yeah, so I mean, generally, and I had to look something up for this because I wanted to see what was out there.
Yes,
Typically an individual is measured based on their performance appraisals, right? And those are happening more frequently, and feedback and whatnot. And there are some
yes,
formal institutions out there, but the Office of Personal Management by the US government, opm.gov,
Okay.
has fantastic resources for people to take a look at, especially companies which are looking to find out how to measure human capital.
Okay. Okay.
There's also something by Employment Studies by the UK government,
Okay.
and they also have phenomenal information. And again, this is at the firm level, how many workers you have, working hours, contracts, are your staff engaged? How do you retain key employees? What's the
Okay.
engagement
Okay.
index of your workers? What is the quality of hires? How absent are they from work?
Okay.
Benchmarks for how much you're compensating them. So this
Okay.
is typically the toolkit would be used by the firms. Did you want to talk about a toolkit for the individual?
Yeah, if you can, throw some light there also.
Yeah, so for the individual, I would say, you get on LinkedIn and you just have continuous improvement. Every year,
Yes.
you should be doing some type of continuing education, where there's
Yes.
some, program or some
Yes.
learning, and now it can be done online.
Yes.
Not necessarily having to go out and get a degree,
Yes.
but maybe some certification or some skill set that you didn't
Yes.
know. And nowadays, badges are very important, right? So you
Yes.
get a badge for every class you get done. So
Yes.
these ways you stay relevant, at least to
Yes.
society. They know that, all right, this guy is not someone who's just going with the flow. They're actually
Yes.
trying to actively improve
Absolutely.
their, and you try to look to see where do you want to be in the next 2 to 3 years,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and try to move in that direction. So now, like
Yes.
I said, right now, data science is key. So go out and take a
Yes.
course in machine learning, understand what that is.
Yes.
What is we're moving towards augmented reality
Yes.
in the metaverse. A whole new universe is being created with a whole new, it's like, we just added a whole new planet with the metaverse, and it's
Yes.
empty, and it needs real estate, and it needs people, and it needs
Yes.
education. So
Yes.
understand what the metaverse is and how to equip yourself with skills there, and this is always going to increase your knowledge, and knowledge is going to lead to wealth. So
Yes.
I think as an individual, you should always keep your appetite, for knowledge and learning active.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You actually hit, nail on the head, with the last 2 minutes. But you have to stay relevant in the, the labor market, which is changing drastically, um, in India and across the globe. So, yes, sir. Thank you, Professor Amit.
Oh, you're welcome. This is a pleasure, Manhar.
No, no, this is such a insightful, 30, 40 minutes, like, really, talking about human capital. I mean, this is, people don't understand, but human capital is what has, is what going to, it is what is going to drive India's, growth for the next 30, 40 years.
And let me end with a couple valuable resources. So if you ever want to learn about, the term human capital is coined first by Gary Becker.
Yes,
And at that time, it was used in a very negative manner. It was kind of like, what do you mean humans are people? How are they capital? So it was actually looked at a very negative connotation, and that was, almost over, 50 years ago.
yes,
And now it's kind of changed the connotation. But if you ever want to look at, there's some work by Asim Maglu at MIT, who's
yes,
really up to date. And of course, Pfeffer does a lot of work at Stanford. So these would be a couple sources that, if people want to read up more on human
so we have
capital
this famous
beyond
equation
Becker.
also, which is Mincer equation, where your wages are determined on your education and the experience. Uh,
Which equation?
so we have this famous Mincer equation.
Oh, the
Um,
Mincer,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, where your wages depend on education and your, experience. Um,
Yeah. Yep.
it comes
The-
from Gary Becker. He was actually, he was the one who pioneered, this human capital, and which was later quantified by Jacob Mincer. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Becker was the one who
Yes.
initiated that, where he was looking at a correlation between school and education and wages, and he found that in his book. And I think you're right about this. So you're
Yes.
saying he was the one who uh find evidence for the equation that
Yeah.
was vectors?
He was the one who formalized it into a equation, which is now famously known as the Mincer equation.
The Mincer,
Mincer,
1958. Yes. Yep.
But yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Amit, for such an insightful podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manhar. All right, stay in touch.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.